you're playing psychologist in so many ways when you're supporting franchisees. And if I recall, you probably started out having, I don't know, maybe 20 franchisees that you were responsible for. And then did we have another business coach at that time when you first started, or were you it?
We did. There were 2 others.
Okay. So there was 3 of you all together.
3 of us together, yeah.
Okay. Because I remember we had 3. I didn't realize we had 3 as far back as '06. And then the responsibility as we're growing, because you came in during a really high growth phase. That 2006, 2007, 2008, we were opening 30, 40 locations a year. Yeah. So how do you as a business coach be able to navigate having that many franchisees come aboard while maintaining the existing level of support, that you could provide? What would you say?
Yeah, you continually learn, and you lean on people that have been there before, whether it's other franchise owners, and you get their insight and what they're doing and how they have tackled those things. But you continually develop. And I think, in that time, we went from a business that was focused on running sports to a business that was focused on the business of running sports. And that was a big change. And when we made that, we saw a ton of success, but it didn't happen overnight. It took a long time to get that in.
Right.
We went through the E-Myth, and I think that was one of the biggest things that we did. We adopted the training of the E-Myth and help coach our owners on, you don't want to work in the business, you want to work on the business. And that transition was a very big one for us at the time.
In fact, I will be so bold to say that probably the biggest frustration that we all had, and I take full responsibility and ownership for it, was that I don't think early on we communicated the importance of scale. Because what would happen is franchisees would open one location and they would start working it themselves, right? And then we would see the numbers, they're not happy with the results. And you and I would say, or the other coaches, we'd all say,
it's simple.
Yeah, you need to get to the 3 locations to be profitable. And that was the challenge, is that they would say, but I can't be at 2 places at once. And we had to it was a shift from them from being at the field and working in the business, right? To hiring, having systems and process, and having the 3 locations, because then it was a game changer for our business. Then we started seeing some real numbers and some real growth.
Yeah, I agree. From my perspective, we need to set the systems to be able to run the leagues. So that became easy. We spent a lot of time early on training how do you mark a field, how do you set up the field, how do you direct parents, where do you put the signs, all that stuff. And for the first, 1 or 2 years of a franchisee's career with us, we were teaching them those type of things. When we developed the training program that really took us through everything, early on, it got us to the coaching phase quicker. And that made it easier for us to have those kind of conversations. The conversations weren't all about the how, they became more about the why.
Yes. If we would have started with the why from the very beginning and then the how, we probably wouldn't have, I wouldn't have had as much gray hair as I have today. What tools do you think were most valuable for you to support franchisees, and also maybe what tools would you suggest to an emerging franchisor? Like, you really have to, your coaches really need these things.
Yeah. So early in my career, when I was coaching, I realized a couple very important things that I still focus on today. I coached elite youth and professional soccer players, and especially the pros. They were hard. They were difficult people to deal with. I was not their main coach, so I couldn't say, do this or I'm going to bench you. They typically came to me in rehab or in the off season and worked through some things. So if I wanted those players to do something, I had to get them to buy in, and I had to get them to trust me. And then the holy grail became, how can we make it their idea? And I worked with a bunch of sports psychologists where I was, and it was really cool to pick up some of these habits from them. But I didn't realize how important that would be to the rest of my career. So bring that to I-9 Sports, it was really pretty interesting. The tools that we created led them on a journey. So it was, rather than saying, here are your numbers, go do this, we created a financial pro forma that said, put in your numbers that you really want, and let's figure out how many locations, whatever it needed to be to get there, how many sports, where were you going to do this? And it filtered through to show them their bottom line. We created a lot of tools like that. We created a staffing model that we inventoried all of the different roles that would take to run the business. And then we led them on an exercise of, now take all these roles and put them into different columns to figure out what works for you. And I think that model really helped us develop buy-in. You know, when we can get people to, I mean, especially put down their dreams on paper, they and ones that they create versus ones that are given to them, that creates an awesome way to hold them accountable going forward. If we say you need the staff and you need X, Y, and Z, well, that's us telling you what you need. By creating a staffing model that made it more of a self-serve, more of a, I could have a hybrid of this person and this person because I'm really good at this and I love this. Let me do that. A franchise owner is more committed when it's their idea. So the holy grail in business coaching and my idea is, how can we get you to say, I want to change and this is what I want to do, and then support the heck out of them.
That is brilliant, Scott. That is absolutely brilliant because basically that's what franchising it is. You have these guardrails that we're staying within, but you're ultimately helping them to achieve their dream without you ramming it down their throat. And it is challenging sometimes because you want somebody to win so bad. You see that there's a franchisee who has all the makings of being great, and then you see that they keep getting in their own way. And we do that, I think, just naturally as humans. We're like, I want to help you. Here's what you need to do, but that doesn't help them. Like, to your point, it has to be their idea. It's sort of maybe in some ways a parent relationship, child relationship. I know if I tell my kid what to do, it's a little more difficult than when it's their idea.
I have to remember that a lot.
Oh, yes, I bet. Having two girls, I bet. What would you say, though, was probably one of the more difficult parts of your job as a franchise business coach, and how'd you tackle it?
Head on. I'll start with that side of the answer.
Yeah.
Any difficult things, I found, rip off the Band-Aid and go right at it. As far as the difficult parts of the job, I knew what my strengths were, and I had a lot of weaknesses. I had holes that I didn't know. Give you a good example. I didn't know financial management. And at one point, you or someone said, hey, we need you to lead this project. And I had to figure it out pretty darn quick. So, taking something that you don't understand, fully immersing yourself and trying to figure it out because it's beneficial to the business.
Probably one of the many things that I could have done better would have been if I was going to have a team of, say, the 3 business coaches, bring in individuals that were really different, that had a different skill set that they could bring to the table. And maybe if I do it all over again, it would be bringing somebody in with a financials are their strength. Somebody else that the psychology of coaching is their strength. Maybe somebody else that the fundamentals of running a successful business would be another great attribute. And then you bring that team together and they're sharing ideas and they're creating best practices.
Absolutely.
And I think that what I did early on was I kept going back to the well to people that, had the sports background. And fortunately for me, you had the wherewithal to say, I'm going to take my sports background, but I can apply it to business. But that doesn't always happen, of course.
I would assume early on you're not going to get that polished individual. You're going to get someone who has something, and you have to develop other pieces of it. I also feel developing certain areas are more difficult than others. Learning how to understand a P&L, it's just time and energy to figure it out. It's not rocket science.
Right.
You don't need to understand it at the level of a CPA. You need to understand it at the level that will help the business succeed and help the franchisee succeed.
What would you say is probably one of the most rewarding aspects of your time at I-9?
100% the relationships. It's unique being a business coach. You get to see people, warts and all. People open up when you're doing it right. How often you go walk down the street and say, how much money did you make this year? Right. That question alone is kind of off-putting the people.
Sure.
But those are just normal questions that you have with franchise owners. So there's a strong connection. And if you don't have a passion for that strong connection, I think you'll struggle.
Yeah. Well, one of the conversations that you and I would have on a regular basis couple times a year was the importance of that face-to-face time with the franchisee. Remember, what would you and I say if too much time went by?
Yeah.
You remember?
I don't remember exactly, but I know it would go south.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
It's kind of like a dating relationship.
Yes.
The further you are away, the less you talk, the more the mind goes into different spots on both sides.
Right.
And now the franchisor doesn't care about me or whatever it may be. So yes, it always goes a little south.
Yeah, I mean, there were times where you would say, I got to get out. I've got to go see this person and that person and that person because we just need face-to-face time. Yeah. There's just something about that business coach franchisee relationship of having that personal time with them together, not just in their business, talking about business, but the family side of it too.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.